Well, the Atlanta Falcons are back in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. It's week 9 here, and they're 5-3. They're hosting the Dallas Cowboys. They're 3-4. So exciting times for the Atlanta Falcons. We're back at home in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. How does it feel to be? We're midway through the season right now. How does it feel?
I mean, the season's just flying by. Yeah. It's just amazing how quick it goes. It seems like you and I just got up here for the week 1 of the season, and now we're already halfway through. Atlanta Falcons 4-0 in the division so far, so this is obviously not a divisional game, but Atlanta Falcons have got to take care of business against a Dallas team that you and I talked about before we came on air might come into this game a little bit desperate.
Exactly. So thank you guys for joining us for the Falcons pregame show presented by Ticketmaster. Taylor Vismor, Derek Rackley. Let's kind of talk about Dallas just briefly before we kind of get to the midway of the season and what we've learned about this Falcons team. I kind of asked you this before we started talking, before this pregame show started. What's more dangerous, a team that needs a win like Dallas right now, or a team that seems to be rolling like the Atlanta Falcons? What do you think is more dangerous?
Yeah, I think it's a team that needs a win, that's desperate. I mean, you look at the Dallas Cowboys, and I say that this is a team this game just seems like it's shaking up much like the Seattle Seahawks game a couple of weeks ago. A team that was kind of reeling a little bit, had lost three straight, had to travel all the way across the country, and then you feel like Atlanta had the kind of a little bit of an edge coming into that game, and then they just didn't play well. It was kind of a clunky performance, and then you let one get away. And the same thing could be said for the Dallas Cowboys. You want to look at them statistically, which we'll get into this later on in the show, but you should say, well, Atlanta's got the edge in this one. But you got a team that could be dangerous because you got a Dak Prescott that's been throwing it all around the yard. You got a CeeDee Lamb, who's one of the top receivers in the National Football League. And even though it looks like they're reeling a little bit and the stats don't necessarily support it, Taylor, it could be a trap game as well if you don't come in and execute today.
I absolutely agree with you. And I was thinking about this going into this game today and coming to the stadium was when Dak Prescott sat down with Erin Andrews at the beginning of the season. And she said, what do you think is possible for you and this Cowboys team this season? And he said, I don't want to leave Dallas until I get a Super Bowl. And so you might think right now, well, we're midway through the season and they don't look like a Super Bowl team at all right now, but you never know. So let's kind of switch gears to the Falcons really fast because we're in the middle of the season with the Falcons just like the Cowboys are. When you look at this Falcons team, I think a lot of people have kind of talked about how they're 4-0 in the division, and they haven't been 4-0 in the division since 2014. And then when you look at the 5-3 that they are, you know, last time that they were 5-3 was in 2016. And what did they do that year? They went to the Super Bowl. So when you look at this team, we're at the midway point now. What have you learned about this Falcons offense and defense?
Well, from offensively, it was a team that struggled coming out of the gate. And it was like there was a lot of people that had a lot of question marks as to, well, what is this team going to look like? I mean, we invested a lot of money at the quarterback position. We've got all this talent on the offense. We've got a veteran offensive line, but things just aren't really coming together. But it was almost like you kind of needed to just give this offense time. And, of course, everything broke out about a month ago when they played the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Kirk Cousins had the over 500 yards passing. And those were the performances where you're like, oh, okay, well, maybe this Atlanta Falcons offense is here. And since then, even though we had a little bit of a hiccup game against Seattle, you've had some fairly consistent offensive performance. Kirk Cousins been able to get the playmakers the football out in space. We've seen the Darnell Mooneys, the Drake Londons, last week the Kyle Pitts getting involved in the game plan, and of course the 1-2 punch in the backfield. So I feel like this is an offense, Taylor, that kind of needed a little bit to get their feet underneath themselves. There's that big conversation about starters not playing in the preseason, right? And does it take teams, units, players longer to get their rhythm, to get their groove? And I think that was the case for Atlanta. Now, granted, we're still midway through the season. That has to continue. But the offense looks like it's in a much better place now than it was when we started the year.
I completely agree with you. And like you said, it kind of took a minute to find that rhythm offensively for this Falcons offense. In the first 4 weeks, they only had four touchdowns, So they had to find that rhythm, and I think, like a lot of people are saying, that Tampa Bay game was when they found that rhythm. And then obviously that Tampa Bay game was the first week in October, and that's when Kirktober started. It seems like every team, every year that he's on a team, doesn't matter if he's on the Falcons or the Vikings or the Commanders, he always does so well in October. So talk to me about what you've seen from Kirk Cousins maybe this month and how he's done in his 13th season in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, Kirk has obviously had an awesome October, and part of the reason why the Falcons have got on this run, I mean, He had a season high of completion percentage last week, a 79.3% against Tampa Bay. And this is a guy, to me, that probably just took a little bit, number one, to get his feet back underneath himself after the injury. Number two, to get comfortable with his play caller. Number three, to get comfortable with all the new offensive pieces around him. And you're starting to see now with these statistics that are shaking out. Third in passing as we entered the weekend this weekend. Tied for fifth in the NFL with 14 touchdowns. Atlanta Falcons offense that looked very pedestrian to start the season, now at over 371 yards per game. And a lot of it has been fueled by Kirk Cousins in the month of October. But I would be remiss if I did not talk about the guys around him. We talk about the playmakers all the time. How about the offensive line and what they've been able to do for this offense throughout the course of this season? They've really settled in. We knew that that was going to be one of the strengths of this team, was the veteran offensive line up front. All the guys coming back essentially from last year. Yes, we've had a little bit of injury at the center position, but we don't talk enough, Taylor, about the offensive line and the job that they've done throughout the course of this season, allowing Kirk Cousins to find these playmakers down the field.
Exactly. Chris Lindstrom was questionable to come into this game today. He will be active and he will be playing. I think you bring up such a good point with this offensive line. It's kind of a thankless job in the NFL. You don't get a lot of looks, and you don't look at someone and think that was a really great play by this guy. But when you talk to the Bijan Robinsons and the Tyler Algiers of the world, and even Kirk Cousins, they always give the flowers to the offensive line. They set up these blocks. They give Kirk a lot of time and the wide receivers time to get downfield so that Kirk can make these really impressive throws and really impressive completions down the field. So I think, like you said, the offensive line is so important, and they've done such a great job. They have such great depth at that position. Next man up mentality. We've seen it throughout this season so far. In just 9 weeks, we've seen that rotation come into play here. But let's kind of switch to the defense and what this defense has been, maybe hasn't been as of late, but they've been doing well, especially in the secondary, in terms of takeaways. What do you make of this defense right now, midway through the season?
Well, it's been such a discussion point about the pass rush, right? And we've had our conversations about it. It's been a national conversation for the Atlanta Falcons, and it just quite hasn't been there. And you're just waiting, okay, when is it going to end up breaking out of its slump? And when are we going to get the Matthew Judon presence to get after the opposing quarterback? And with all that being said, you've kind of had this bend but not break defense, but it's been the secondary that's really helped propel this team. A.J. Terrell, who was in an interception slump going back to the 21 season, not only got his first, but got his second interception of the year. That's comforting for the Atlanta Falcons in the secondary. You got to have one of your best corners, one of the arguably top 5 or top 10 corners in the National Football League, making an impact, not just covering people, but also stealing the football away. But then you think about Jesse Bates and what he did. We obviously saw the outstanding season that he had last year, but Jesse Bates just continues to do what Jesse Bates does, and that's taking the football away. Created 4 takeaways this year, 2 forced fumbles, 2 interceptions. Not only that, second leading tackler on the team. I mean, this guy is just all over the field. So yes, in the lack of pass rush is an area that it's got to be improved. But aside from that, you've had the defensive backfield that's really taking care of business, creating some takeaways, helping us even out that turnover margin, and helping keep this defense competitive and in the football game.
Yeah, I think what's so interesting about those stats about both Jesse Bates and A.J. Terrell is that they have the same amount of takeaways in terms of interceptions this year. Last year, Jesse had 6 interceptions. He had a career year in every major statistical category. And now you're seeing A.J. Terrell kind of come in and play with it, play to the standard that Jesse expects from the guys in his secondary. So let me ask you this. I asked Jesse this a couple weeks ago. What's different for A.J. Terrell right now? Because yes, he got his first interception in 2 or 3 years in Carolina, but then he had another one against Tampa Bay. So what seems to be different for A.J. Terrell this year?
Yeah, there's a couple things that come to mind. Number one is you could call the elephant in the room. Got a contract, right?
Yeah.
He got paid, and he earned it, right? So give A.J. Terrell all the credit, and he earned the contract. But maybe it's a little bit of that elephant off his back a little bit, the monkey's off his back, whatever you want to call it, which the great part about it is that it's not only that, but he got his first interception. It was like maybe he was pressing. Maybe he was just feeling like, oh, my gosh, I'm this top corner in the National Football League, but I don't have the interceptions to support it. He might look across to a guy that he's going to play this week, and Deron Bland, who had 9 interceptions. You're like, how come I can't do that, right? Well, now that's happening for A.J. Terrell. He's starting to take away the football, and I would imagine that the defensive coaches were probably not panicking that A.J. Terrell was not getting these interceptions, but the fact that he's finally getting them, it's almost like a sigh of relief. It's like, Okay, we're getting some takeaways from the corner position. We feel really good where we're at with the safety position. And so now, yeah, it's like A.J. Terrell could just breathe a little easier now. Because you know he was doing the work, but inside his head as a competitor, he's like, how come I'm not picking off passes? Like, this is what I do. I'm a defensive back. I pick off passes. So finally, now that he got himself one, and another one, maybe we'll continue to see this thing snowball a little bit.
Well, and I think today they're going to have a big opportunity to do so, to get those pickoffs and possibly a pick six if we're lucky. We'll see, because what Dak Prescott and this Cowboys offense is doing right now is they're airing the ball out. They are not running the ball at all. They actually rank last in the NFL in rushes per game. So let me ask you, let's kind of turn our focus to the Cowboys now. Obviously, Dak Prescott, he's one of the most well-known quarterbacks in this league right now, but he's just not having the year that we've seen prior from him and the wideouts. So what do you make of this Cowboys offense this year?
Well, what do I make of them? This has been a very one-dimensional offense. Dak has been throwing the football again. Very reminiscent of the Seattle Seahawks game just a couple of weeks ago when Geno Smith came in here, and it was like he was averaging, like, I think it was 42 pass attempts a game. They're throwing the football all over the yard, and that's kind of what's turned into with the Dallas Cowboys offense. They have not been able to run it effectively, so they've been kind of putting everything into the hands of Dak Prescott. And even though last week you could look at the numbers and say 243 yards, but it's the interceptions and it's his inability to convert in the red zone. Look at that number, 39.1% completion rate inside the red zone. And he's been turning the football, 2+ interceptions in the last 3 games. So you couple that with the fact that you're not able to punch it in the red zone, your quarterback's turning it over, and you can't run with the football. That's the reason why they're struggling. Oddly enough, Taylor, they're actually playing better on the road this year. 3-1 record, 19.8 points per game allowed, okay, on defense. I know we're talking about Dak Prescott and the offense on the road, but at home this year, they're 0-3, and they're allowing like 39 points per game. They're a different team when they go on the road. They're on the road today.
Yes.
I don't know why that is. There's always so much pressure placed on the shoulders of a Dallas Cowboys quarterback. And I have not been inside the Cowboys Stadium this year, so I don't know if he's feeling the boo birds. He's feeling even more pressure when he's at home. And he's not necessarily feeling that when he's on the road. But that just comes with the territory. You're going to be the quarterback with the team that's got the blue star on your helmet. You got to live up to the expectations. And guess what? Until you get into the postseason consistently, until you win them that Super Bowl, there are always going to be those doubters, and that's what Dak has had to live with.
That's right. Something to note, though, this Atlanta Falcons team is 0-3 at home as well. The 3 losses that the Falcons have had, they've all been at home: the Steelers, the Chiefs, and then, of course, the Seahawks. So let me ask you this, because the pass rush has been such a conversation, but what we've seen in Dak so far this year is that he's not running around. He's not leaving the pocket so much. He's the 10th most sacked quarterback in the NFL right now. So is this an opportunity for guys like a Matthew Judon, like a Grady Jarrett, to get those sacks, to get those pressures, and keep him in the pocket and possibly get him on the ground today? Yeah,
you wonder if this has been just one of those emphasis on his shoulders is, I need to be a more pocket passer for the Dallas Cowboys. I need to stay in there and not necessarily use my athleticism to get outside the pocket, because I think he's got like 10 carries on the season, which is very odd for Dak Prescott. You look at him and you think of an athletic, mobile-style quarterback that's got the ability to use his legs, get out of some trouble when the pass protection breaks down in front of him. And so I would say, yes, this does shape up to be an opportunity to get after the quarterback, but it just hasn't happened this year. So I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm optimistic just because there's not too much of a track record, a resume, if you will, of that happening. But if it's going to happen for a quarterback that's going to throw the football a lot, has not been getting outside the quarterback, and has been under pressure, yes, maybe this is a breakout game. And much like we talked about with A.J. Terrell, maybe this pass rush just needs a breakout game. They just need that one game where it's been like nothing for a few weeks, and all of a sudden they come away with 5.
Exactly.
Right?
That's something that Jimmy Lake has brought up in media and press conferences when he is asked about that pass rush. He says, I know that we're going to get there. I know that we're going to break through at some point, and when we do, we're going to be dangerous. It just is a matter of when that's going to happen, and of course, no one can tell when that's going to happen,
right.
But it's eventually going to happen is what Jimmy Lake says. So we'll see if that happens today. But something else that this Cowboys team seems to be really struggling in is their run game. Of course, Ezekiel Elliott did not travel with the team due to disciplinary reasons, so he will obviously be inactive for the game today. But what do you make of this rush offense of the Cowboys this year?
Not much.
Right?
Don't make much of it. Averaging 74 yards a game on the ground. That's 32nd in the National Football League, by the way. They just just not had any effectiveness. And I think you look at the injuries. Obviously, they brought Ezekiel Elliott back. I think you can make the argument that Ezekiel Elliott is nowhere near the running back that he used to be. Even though he got into the game last week, scored a touchdown, there was a lot of discussion about where he ranks in all-time rushing touchdowns for the Dallas Cowboys. I don't think he's the same running back as he was, call it the first 3, 4, 5 years in the National Football League. So they've turned to guys like Rico Dowdle. And Rico Dowdle has been okay for them, right? I think his season high this year is about 87 yards in the game a few weeks ago against Pittsburgh. He's not punched it in the running game as far as the touchdown goes. The one thing I will tell you, though, is they got Dalvin Cook, and he's been elevated, right? And Dalvin Cook is a guy that he got the 6 carries for 12 yards last week against the 49ers. You're saying big deal, right? But Dalvin Cook is a guy that had 4 straight seasons where he rushed for over 1,000 yards with the Minnesota Vikings. Kirk Cousins knows him well. Didn't really do anything last year with the Jets. Nothing really happened well for the Jets last year when Aaron Rodgers got hurt. But he's a guy that quietly, if his role ends up expanding, you can't take him for granted because he has had a lot of success. But this offense as a whole has tried to lean on guys like Rico Dowdle in the backfield, and it just hasn't worked. So they've resulted in trying to throw the football. They've got one of the best wide receivers in the National Football League, but they have not had the consistency on offense because they don't put pressure on the defense that they can consistently run the ball effectively.
Yeah, you bring up that wide receiver, and I mean, he is a star on everyone's report every week that they see any team. They're starring that number 88 right there. Of course, it's a special number for the Cowboys to wear 88. Who is CeeDee Lamb? How do you stop the production that he seems to have with Dak Prescott?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, they're going to force feed him the football, right? So whether you like it or not, he's going to get the ball thrown in his direction. And he tied his career high with 13 receptions last week, season high 146 yards, which oddly enough was his first 100-yard game of the season. However, he's got 19 of them in his career. I mean, I think most people would tell you he's a top 5, if not top 10 wide receiver in the National Football League, and Dak's going to be trying to get the football in his hands. Came into this week, third in the NFL in receiving yards at 613 yards on the season, 45 receptions, so not necessarily blowing everything away with just the 4 touchdowns, but he's a guy that at any point, at any game, he can go for over 100 and he can score 3 touchdowns. If you're not in great communication, you play him properly, and of course not making penalties against him where you're giving Dallas a whole bunch of free yardage as well. So it's going to be a huge focus. Obviously Atlanta has focused and they've game planned for him the entire week, but he is one of the better ones in the National Football League. So the defensive backfield is going to have to be on their toes.
Exactly. Let's kind of switch to this Cowboys defense really quickly, because you brought up how Dalvin Cook and Kirk Cousins, they are friendly foes in a way. They've seen each other with the Vikings, and the same goes for Mike Zimmer, the defensive coordinator for the Cowboys. He knows Kirk Cousins well. He's the one that brought Kirk Cousins into the Vikings organization back when they made that trade. So let me ask you this. Who has more of the competitive edge here? Mike Zimmer, who knows how Kirk works, he knows how he's wired, he knows what he likes to see, what he doesn't like to see, or Kirk Cousins that knows what Mike Zimmer likes to put on the field in terms of his defense?
Yeah, I think it's a great question because there's so much familiarity between these two because, yes, Kirk went up against him and his defensive style when he was in Minnesota, and Mike knows what his tendencies are, what his strengths, and what his weaknesses are. But I would tell you, if I was going to give it an advantage in this game, okay, in this game, I give it to Kirk Cousins. And let me tell you why. Because Micah Parsons and Deron Bland are not playing in this game. And if Mike Zimmer has 2 of the better players in the National Football League at their respective positions at his discretion, then maybe he does have the upper hand because Micah Parsons can get after any quarterback in the National Football League. And as I mentioned before, Deron Bland led the National Football League in interceptions last year with 9. He's a takeaway machine. Neither of those guys are going to be playing in this game, so maybe that gives a little bit of the edge to Kirk Cousins, knowing how Mike Zimmer is going to operate that defense, but not necessarily having the arsenal that he wants to be able to efficiently get after the quarterback.
Yeah, you bring up those defensive players that are not going to be playing today. So let's go ahead and get to today's inactives. Obviously, for the Cowboys, the defense is where all those injured players are sitting. Micah Parsons, he's not out. Ezekiel Elliott, I know he's on the offense, but he didn't even travel. Deron Bland, he's out today as well. I mean, obviously, those first 3 names are the big names in the conversation coming into this game.
Yep.
For both of these teams, really, that's the whole conversation. I know you kind of already talked on Parsons and Bland not being able to play today, but does that kind of give a little bit of cushion for this offense to go out there and play with a little bit more, I don't know, pizzazz style a little bit, because those guys aren't breathing down their necks the whole time?
How do I answer this question properly? In the broadcasting profession, it's a great thing to talk about. Yeah.
Right.
Does it make you breathe a little easier? Yes. As the former player, I'm going to say no, because guess what? There are other professionals on that defense, and we found that out against the Seattle Seahawks, right? Like when you think that a team is coming limping in, they're professionals as well, and they get paid to do what they do, right? So just because Micah Parsons and Deron Bland are not going to be in this game, there's going to be somebody behind him that's a pro. And maybe this ends up being their breakout game. So you can't take any group or any team lightly, because that's the moment you get beat in the National Football League.
Yeah.
This has to be our game plan, is to execute at the fullest against the Dallas Cowboys, no matter who is over there, whether it's Micah Parsons or any other pass rusher, whether it's Deron Bland or any other defensive back. Our job is to execute the offense, and for Kirk Cousins, take the football where your eyes lead you, right? Don't play against a certain coach or a defense. Just make the throws where your eyes take you. Throw the football where your read tells you to throw the football.
Exactly, and I think also with those guys that are out with those big marquee players, they bring in guys that might not know their name or even know how to pronounce their name or where they went to college maybe. And what that means is they don't have as many looks on tape of what they can do and what they're really good at, what they're really strong at doing. So it could be almost in a way a competitive edge for the Cowboys. Let's go ahead and get to the Falcons inactives today. J.D. Bertrand is out with a concussion. Obviously, we spoke about it earlier. Chris Lindstrom was questionable to come into this game, and he will be playing. I want to bring up this. He's not on the inactives list. He was placed on IR. Rook Orororo was placed on IR with an ankle injury. So we're going to see Contavious Street back off that inactives list, potentially playing and being in that rotation today. I mean, I know that Rook is on IR and he'll be out for the foreseeable future, but what were you seeing from Rook for the last couple of weeks in his production and how he was able to come in as a rookie and be such a professional and play at such a high level?
Well, I think it's his energy, and I think that's what everybody else feeds off of, right? It's just he plays with this tenacity, right? And we knew that right after he was drafted, right? I mean, he just got on the phone with the owner and was just shouting and everything. Come on, man, let's go. I'm ready to go. And that's the kind of same thing that he brought to the defense. Did he necessarily bring the sacks? No, but I think the fact that he was out the first few weeks, or at least as far as on the inactive list, and then he got a chance to get in the game and he started playing and he stayed as one of the active members, that the coaching staff was happy with the performance that he was bringing on the field. And so, yes, they're not going to have him. He's a rookie. Contavious Street came in and did some great things last year after Grady Jackson got hurt, and Grady Jarrett, got hurt, and he was able to provide a little bit of production when they needed him. And he's a veteran, right? So he's a guy that can come in and he can make some plays. So that's what we'll likely see with somebody like Contavious Street in there, but it's kind of next man up philosophy no matter who. Fortunately, Atlanta's been very healthy this season. Knock on wood. I almost want to say that quietly. But health has been on their side, which sometimes you got to have. In order to win in the National Football League, yes, you got to execute, no turnovers, all this other stuff, but you also got to have a little bit of luck,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah, so also inside linebacker Troy Anderson is going to be out again today with a knee injury. Right now, Raheem Morris is saying that he's day-to-day, so we might see him back next week or might see him back after the bye, if not these next 2 weeks. So we'll see. That means that Troy Anderson, J.D. Bertrand, both out, so we're only going to be seeing Nate Landman and Caden Ellis on that interior linebacker group, or inside linebacker group today against the Cowboys. Let's go ahead and get to the keys to the game presented by Wells Fargo. You got three for me, so let's start with number one. What's your first one
Number
today?
one, sharp play overall. And this is kind of a little bit out in left field. And the reason why I say this again, I brought it up a couple of times, is going back to the Seattle game. I felt like that game was just kind of clunky. It was a little bit rough. The execution level just wasn't there. 3 turnovers in the game. Did not force any takeaways. Gave up way too many points. 34 points in that game. 9 penalties for 72 yards. All of the things that you do in the National Football League to get yourself beat. But what happened last week? We did not have those turnovers. So I'm just thinking sharp play overall. Execution level, no penalties, or at least minimize the amount of penalties. Saying no penalties is almost kind of unheard of in the National Football League. But this needs to be like a 3, 4, 5 penalty game, right? To where it's not stopping drives or putting you way behind the chains. And it's just all about execution level, focus, and everybody being on the same page.
Yeah, I will say Raheem Morris came to media 2 weeks ago, after the Seattle Seahawks game and said everything felt flat. Our team felt flat. Our warm-ups felt flat. Our fans even felt flat.
Yeah.
So if you are in the stadium today and you're here for the game, be loud. Be proud. I mean, these Cowboys, they travel well. It's America's team. They got a lot of what do you call those, bandwagoners? Maybe, potentially.
No, they just found. They're Cowboys fans,
maybe,
and I'm telling you.
So be loud, be proud today, and help this team be sharp overall. What's your second key to the game today?
Yeah, second key is going to be win the turnover margin. And again, I've kind of focused on this because it is one of the statistics that is the most important in the National Football League. And I think Atlanta has done a much better job after the first 2 or 3 weeks of kind of getting back on, I want to say, the positive side, but they've gotten themselves to even in the turnover margin so far this year, which is 15th in the National Football League. But they're facing a Dallas team coming into this game at -8 in the turnover margin. That's 30th in the National Football League. So what does that tell me? That tells me there's opportunities to make plays in this game. Takeaways, can you take the football away? Offensively, can you secure it? Dallas, just 5 takeaways the entire season. It's not been a strength for them. But again, it doesn't mean you let up. Doesn't mean you get loose with the football, because that's the moment that it ends up hurting you. So win that turnover margin again, just like they did last week. 3-0 against Tampa Bay had a lot to do with that Falcons victory.
Yeah, that second play of the game against Tampa Bay, obviously Jesse Bates with a forced fumble punch out. And he says he and Nate Landman love to look for the punch outs. They want to punch out, but they call themselves the Bloody Knuckles crew. I don't know if I support that name, but go for it, Jesse. So this defense is eager for turnovers, and I know that this offense is even more eager to not have turnovers on their side of the ball. So let's get to the third and final key to the game today. What you got?
It's going to be to dominate the run game, and we talked a little bit about this. Is Dallas not running the football well, and their defense not stopping the run very well? So to me, that means that's an opportunity for this team to go out and dominate in both phases. I'm not saying offensively or defensively. I'm saying both of those. Let's shut down any opportunity that they have to run it and make sure that they are a one-dimensional team. Put the ball through the air, and let's force Dak Prescott to make some throws, as we've seen that he's had some interceptions this season. And that guy right there, Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, I think this needs to be a statement game for them, that they win this football game by dominating on the ground, controlling the pace of the game, controlling the clock, and maybe we just need a good 4-minute drill to run this clock out and ensure the victory. I think we got 2 of the best guys in the backfield to do it. You got an experienced offensive line. You got a quarterback that knows the importance of run game. So dominate on both sides, offensively and defensively. Let's not let the Dallas Cowboys sniff anything when it comes to the run game.
Right, you guys just saw Tyler Algier, Bijan Robinson. You also saw in that shot of Bijan, Zach Robinson. He was asked this week why these 2 running backs are so special and why it's so fun to game plan with having those 2 guys. They call them thunder and lightning because one's a bowling ball and one he's all shifty and whatnot. We all know what their 2 playing styles are. But Zach Robinson said, listen, it's so fun to game plan with these 2 guys because you don't have to game plan different looks and different calls per player. They can do whatever you ask them to, both of them at both at the same standard that the other one plays at. So having these 2 guys in your backfield that can play any look and any call that you give them is insanely impressive. So I do have high hopes for this running game today. So here's my preference.
There it is. I was waiting on it. Taylor's preference.
I didn't say anything about my preference today before the show started, guys. So my preference is, last week, speaking of Zach Robinson and what he said to media, he said, I think Kirk had his most complete game in Week 8 against Tampa. You saw a really great run game, but you also saw Kirk making these really impressive throws. I think about the Mooney completion later in the game. I mean, it was a dot over the shoulder, such a good throw, and obviously such a great catch by Darnell Mooney. So I would like to have another complete game from Kirk Cousins today. I want to see him maybe even scramble a little bit too. I think what you saw in Kirk Cousins last week against Tampa is something that you could kind of work off of in this next half of the season, if you will. And I would like to see a full and complete game from Kirk Cousins.
I'd like to see the full and complete game too. I don't want to see Kirk Cousins scramble though. We saw the 13-yard run last week, and it was great.
You didn't like it?
It was great. Hey, quit while you're ahead,
I
right?
loved it. I loved it. I was so about it. And Wes, you can hear on the radio call, Wes Durham's such a great play-by-play caller, and he said, "Run, Kirk, run!" And I mean, it was so slow. It was so slow, but it was awesome. That's what I love.
It was great.
They put the Achilles injury questions to bed with that 13 yards.
Stay in the pocket.
No, I loved it.
Kirk, stay in the pocket.
I loved it. We're going to let you guys go, though. Turn on Fox. It's going to be on at 1 o'clock today. And then we are going to be on the road for the next 2 weeks. Saints and then Denver. And then the Falcons are going to hit the bye. So we're going to see you guys back next week in Ticketmaster Studios in Flowery Branch, Georgia. So until then, enjoy the game.
Rise up, Dirty Birds.